Jack Doherty could be in massive legal risk now that he's been hit with crimes in Miami, and more liability could come down the pike. Of course, this on the Legal Mindset, where we teach you to be your own judge. I'm Andrew Esquire, American attorney, and we're going to get into it today. Of course, I've got a PowerPoint for you guys. So let's talk about the trouble that Jack Doherty's got in. And some of this has been discussed on social media while I've been on a business trip. Some of this has been not discussed. So we're going to get into some of the stuff that has and has not been discussed today with this lovely PP, this lovely PowerPoint. So, of course, if you guys don't know, Jack Doherty was arrested this week in Miami, where ironically, he was arrested almost the day that I was on the flight out. I'm not going to say that's a coincidence, but maybe it is. So he got arrested, and even his oversized bodyguard could not protect him from the police. And one of the most beautiful things about this video, which I once again don't want to play, so I don't want to get claimed or anything else like that. But the beautiful thing about this video is he is dressed down by the police. The police absolutely talk to him and say, "Who do you think you are? What do you think you are? What do you think you're doing?" And they absolutely dress this guy down and put him in his place, which is something that a lot of people on the internet have been waiting for a very, very, very long time. Now, we have to get into what the reality is versus what is the criminal penalties, because a lot of people out there are looking at the maximums for the crimes and saying Jack Doherty's going to get 7 years in prison, he's going to get maximum fines, he's going to get all this stuff. Hold your horses. As always on the Legal Mindset, we give you the straight facts, we give you the quick and dirty and the fast facts. And if you like that, make sure to hit the like button, make sure to subscribe, make sure to comment on the video. So let's get into the reality. So here's the criminal maximum. So this is the maximum under Florida law, which is the state in which I am a member of the bar. Is possession of a controlled substance, amphetamine. Now, that's the most serious one. So we're starting at the top with a felony. Yes, that on paper is 5 years and a $5,000 fine, right? That is the maximum amount. Now, a lot of people skip over the word maximum. It's really important there, guys. The next is possession of 20 grams of marijuana, which is still a first-degree misdemeanor. Now, this is one where there's a huge expectation versus reality difference here. You guys are going to see in a second. And next is resisting arrest without violence. Now, resisting arrest without violence is very interesting because I know a lot of public attorneys in Florida, some of which are on the state side. That's the prosecutors, some are the public defenders. And this is one that people need to understand. If there is any excuse to slap that on there, the state attorneys are going to slap that on there. If they are, I know many of them, and they are going to throw that on there. If you in any way are sassing them, talking back, failure to comply, boom, resisting arrest without violence. Without violence is important because if he had actually hit an officer or pushed an officer or done anything physical with an officer, you would have violence in there. But we don't have that in this case. We simply have a failure to comply, which is much different. It's a first-degree misdemeanor under the statutes in Florida. So what's the criminal reality for these things? Now, this is super important. So possession of the controlled substance, the amphetamine, that's the one that everyone's barking up. All the taglines, or he's going to get a bunch of time for this. That's not what's going to happen here in the case. In this case, because of his record, he's probably going to have probation with drug classes. He was not an amphetamine dealer. There's no sales intent. So he's probably going to either get probation or probation with a withheld adjudication. What that means is they're going to say, hey, we're going to drop this if you go on probation. Now, that probation might be very lengthy, and I'm going to get into this. I think the probation should be as hard and strict as possible. In fact, one of the beautiful things about probation is you can set crazy conditions. And one thing they could set is, hey, you can't be going out and engaging in this sort of behavior for content in the future, restricting his content. I think that might be a great term of probation, and then keeping him from monetizing what is essentially criminal activity in the future. Then you've got the possession of 20 grams or less of marijuana. That's a citation. At this point in Florida, if you get caught with 20 grams or less of marijuana, that's going to be a slap on the wrist. It's a citation or a withheld adjudication. They just drop that. Now, resisting arrest without violence, that's not going to get you any jail time in reality. What that will get you is 12 months of probation. And like I said, up to 12 months, 6 to 12 months is about the average for that. So what that could be, once again, combine the possession of a controlled substance, the amphetamine, the marijuana, the resisting arrest. Let's say he just gets a year probation or 8 months probation. Let's make those terms of probation as strict as possible. Let's make him do random drug tests. Let's make him do other stuff. Let's make his life uncomfortable for 8 to 12 months, 6 to 12 months. I think that's reasonable. And I think that's an absolute L for him in terms of his lifestyle of just doing whatever the hell he wants and not taking any accountability for it. This is very similar to nuisance streamers, which I've covered, like Johnny Somali, who feel themselves and feel their ability to do whatever, whenever, wherever. That time needs to come. The time for streamers being checked and saying, hey, look, you got to follow the law here. You've got to comply. There are people that are more important than you, i.e. the police. And if you are at a point, if content creators like Jack Doherty are at a point where they feel like they can get away with not complying with police, it's about time we restrict them as much as legally possible. Now, does that mean jail? Probably not, guys. Sorry. All those headlines are not coming. But Legal Mindset's got something for you, because I think now is the right time for a huge, massive liability, which no one's talking about right now, to hit him. And that is everything with McKinley Richardson. So in case you guys didn't know, this is the one that people really shouted out. And I remember when this went down, even I was like, there's some liability here. There's a lot of contract issues, a lot of things going on. McKinley, she has not filed in Florida. Now, Florida would be the place to file. And this is great because the crimes that just went down in Florida. So because these both went down in Florida, there's a very reasonable legal basis for her to take at least some action here. And I think that could have wide repercussions on him and hit him much harder than a slap on the wrist with necessarily these drug charges, right? Which might just get him probation. And let me talk about that real quick, because I think with McKinley, these are the real liabilities. And this is what people don't realize when you pull stuff like this, particularly with the wedding setting and everything like that. You had intentional infliction of emotional stress. I talked about that with Emaru and that whole thing going on with Miskiff. Public humiliation regarding those wedding vows, talking about not dating men, taking all of her OnlyFans money, etc., all that sort of stuff. That is classic IIED, intentional infliction of emotional stress. And I think there's a high likelihood if she chose to go after that and she was serious about it, I think she could look for some liability there. You've got fraudulent inducement, misrepresentation, tricking her into an OnlyFans management contract, breach of contract. There was duress in that signing of that contract, invasion of privacy. You're streaming personal life without consent. It looked like there was no consent there. You've got defamation, a false portrayal of her image as immoral and a gold digger, etc. All those things stacked together. And at the very end, I wanted to put the cream, the cherry on top is a restraining order. I think the Florida crimes he just committed makes the perfect legal basis for a restraining order. At a very bare minimum, McKinley could hit him with a restraining order as an FU. You know, once again, this is like the scorched earth tactic, right? If she really wants to get back at him, if she's really mad about that, it's simple. It's so easy to get a restraining order right now based on just these activities, just what he had right now. Saying, hey, look, judge, he's unhinged. Look at these things he's doing right now. He doesn't care about anybody. Boom, restraining order. That's going to happen. That would be easy, and that would at least tie him up a little bit. So in conclusion here, guys, what I think the recent crimes, they're not going to be that hard. They're going to be light in punishment. But probation conditions can be strict, and I think they should be strict here. And we should, make sure the judge is properly informed about this guy and make sure they know, hey, prosecutors, this guy is going to go out and engage in this behavior. If anything, the law enforcement knows what type of attitude he has. They saw what type of respect he has for law enforcement, which is zero. And because he absolutely doesn't respect anybody, he only cares about himself. I think it's a great situation for very strict probation conditions. And lastly, if McKinley Richardson, if it was not for drama, if it wasn't all kayfabe and stuff like that, if she's real, if she's sincere, I would strike now, because she hasn't done anything yet, and there's no the statute of limitations has not run on this stuff. She can still go in Florida and pursue all of those claims, all of them, which could financially devastate him, at least get him into a situation where he's got to settle for a large amount. And it's the perfect time to sue Doherty right now. At a minimum, go file that restraining order and get that done. But guys, what do you think? What do you think is going to happen to Jack Doherty? Do you think that McKinley should go after him? I want to know in the comments below, and I'll catch you on the next.